Hi, welcome to Evidence for Faith. It's your host, Michael Lane, again with you as we are continuing in our series on David and the giants. And as we're doing this series, focusing primarily on the evidence of King David, we've already looked at three major pieces of evidence. That would be the Chaldean inscription. These are previous lessons. The second one being the Moabite stone. And the third one was the Temple of Karnak. Now, we're looking at some minor pieces of evidence showing King David. And now, this one might strike you a little strange, but this piece of evidence we're going to look at today are simply slings, like we have here on the wall. It's just ordinary slings. Now, why you might be thinking, how is this evidence for David? Do we have his original sling? No, we don't. But there have been slings found, which we'll find out later as we dive into this lesson. But as I just open this up and explain to you, you see, some critics say that the story with David and Goliath never took place. I mean, it's even hard to picture David in your mind without him holding a sling because of that famous story, which I do believe is historically accurate. And we'll get into that in future lessons. But as we look at this, David has a sling and he uses it as a weapon. See, some critics of the Bible and the story say that slings like this were never used until after the time period of David. Now, David lived right around 1000 BC, and they say there was no evidence whatsoever that David could have used a sling as a weapon because they weren't used back then. Well, is that true? Let's dive into this lesson about slings and let you see for yourself how slings actually do support the story and the existence of King David. Because of these three artifacts, these three things, the Chaldean inscription, the Mesha Stela, and this from the Temple of Karnak, we can see that David actually did exist. And most scholars now concede that David, from the Bible, King David did actually live, that he was not a mythical person or a figure, that he ruled in the 11th century, because the time frame all fits this. Even so, those are three major, and I told you at the beginning there'd be three major, then we're going to have some minor pieces. Let me just give you a few things about some minor discoveries that actually add weight to David and the stories we read about David. So the first one I want to talk about is our slings. You know the story with King David fighting, or as he's a shepherd at that point, as a boy, he fights the giant Goliath and kills him using a sling and a stone. Well, over here, hanging on the wall here in our studio, I want to show you, we do have a couple of slings that were made. These were actually, I got in just outside of Bethlehem, and there's boys there who make these things, and shepherds, even to this day in Israel, will still use things like this. And it was some things, you know, today we have a slingshot. This was a little bit earlier. Now, some will say slings, David, who is a shepherd, used it to kill lions, tigers, and bears, or whatever, or attacking the sheep and stuff. There's many stories about that, and throughout the Bible, that David was very, very accurate with this. And the thing is that some scholars will say, well, slings were not really used as weaponry. Well, that is totally wrong. Or others will say slings as weapons didn't exist at the time of David. They came later. No, that's not true either, because for one, when King Tut's tomb was opened up, they found slings in there. Also, in other Egyptian tombs and that they have opened up, they have found slings in them. And these tombs are all before the time of David. King Tut lived before David did. And so this shows that slings were definitely, and even wall reliefs and stuff showed that slings were used as weapons. Slings were a typical weapon in ancient times. They can still be used today. We have better things like rifles now, but slings are an excellent source of weaponry. Many armies had them in ancient times, even fighting up into the Roman rebellion and even after. And they have found many of these. And a really good expert, we know this also, a good expert with a sling, a soldier who's armed with a sling as his weapon, we know that they were able to throw a stone as far as 400 yards, that's over 360 meters, with great accuracy. That they could hit like a cup at 400 yards. That's how accurate these people were. The thing is, we know this from other ancient sources. So when we read about David killing Goliath with a stone from a sling when they're in combat close to each other, that is not out of the question. That is very probable and likely to have occurred. because slings were used as weapons at that time. And David, being a shepherd, he was really good at it, apparently, as most shepherds were.
Support the show. Become a donor at evidenceforfaith.org/give.